Good afternoon. Welcome to this week's edition of the Leaky Pen Podcast, where every time my soul is urged, my pen leaks words of revelation, accountability, and wisdom. In this week's edition, I was urged to reach back and grab words that once leaked from my pen while on my way to my holy oasis. These are some of the most vulnerable words this old leaky pen has ever spilled. They just happen to be a perfect lead into this week's topic, which is he real? I'm going to say that one more time. These very vulnerable words happen to be a perfect lead in to this week's topic. Is he real? This particular piece, titled Holy Oasis, it's the first piece in my book, Purpose, Passion, and Love, The Heart of a Man. I have done it, performed it several times in open mic sessions, and it just so happened to fit what is my answer to this question of today's topic. Is he real? And before we get into that, the words of that piece, they go like this. It says, I went to God all smoked out, lungs green like olive gardens. My life was too far gone to gain any order on my own. That's right, I needed some help. From a divine place, I was at war with myself. Everything tried so far, with failure, my cards were dealt. That's right, I needed some help. When I went to God with a butcher's knife in my hand and some suicide notes, no intentions on tomorrow, blade firmly against my throat. The validity of the realness of God, my one last hope. That's right, I needed some help from a divine place, for I was at war with myself. Everything tried, with failure, cards dealt. I learned that fulfillment is made of paradoxical epiphanistics. The acceptance of self is not so simplistic when the inner vision doesn't yet match the physical characteristics. Heart twisted. Pain so great, only from the giver of life and death could it be alleviated. He said, come as you are, so I finally obeyed it. Unpolished layers don't make us unworthy of unconditional love, otherwise known as agape. Don't let those with lack of knowledge and understanding make you believe that a without sin human being walks this planet. If that was humanly possible, his son would never have walked this planet. Erasing the pain and fulfilling the promise is only possible through apostleship. Never be discouraged by slips. Deliverance is to be found in the effort of relationship with He, that is Revelation chapter 1, verse 8. So when the war is tucked away, and the so-called divinely placed, ironically, are incapable of providing successful navigation, and it's not clear if they really know the way, or if they only have chameleon-like faces, such is the journey of some to a holy oasis. It ain't no shame before God because of the form of His presentation. You know, in this world today, we are hit with more than I have ever seen in my lifetime. So much confusion in terms of the realness of God. Every time you turn around, it's some smart person posting or putting up something where this moment in history and how it's written in the Bible contradict themselves, or if how the realness of God was presented to us was done in a way to mislead us in some way, or for some people to maintain power. You know, we get caught up in this war of which way to believe is the right way to believe. In the war of religions, what's the right way to believe? What should this person's name be? Where did this really happen? We get hit with all these questions, and it's kind of hard to tell if it's always been that way or if it just seems magnified because of the internet and all of us being so easily tied together. But that question of, is he real? It's a dangerous one. And it's one that I felt like I should address and answer and attack just for my own personal well-being when it comes to making sure that I do my part to, number one, answer the question. And for my money, the answer to that question is yes. And the reason Holy Oasis was such a good piece to lead into this topic with is because there's a lot of situations and occurrences described in this piece that deal with the struggle of believing in God. And I wanted to show and go on record as giving my testimony as to why my answer to that question of today's topic, is he real? Why it is yes. I am not here to argue with anybody. I certainly do believe in allowing people to find their own way. But what I am here to do is give you two occurrences in my lifetime to where I can say that I know for a fact I felt the power of God. I saw God's face in not in a physical form, but in a spiritual form, in a way that you don't actually see anything, but you feel his presence to know that it can only be one God and that it is for real. Now, before I get into those two examples, I'll be the first one to tell you that I believe too that this word has been twisted in a lot of ways. There's been some things taken out of it. There's been some things rearranged. There's been some things left out of it purposely by people of power, so to speak, that needed to maintain control. I give you that. But what I too will give you and admit to you is that through all of that, there is a truth. And no matter how much you read it, no matter how much tampering could have been done with it, when you read it and when you feel it and when you begin to understand, you will know that that part, whatever that part is that delivers that truth to you, you will know that it's true. Now, in developing that relationship and in getting to that point, you're going to run across a couple of situations, just like what I'm getting ready to describe, that will show you the truth also. And so, like I said before, I'm not here to argue with anybody's opinion. I'm just here to give you what I know and how I know. And also to let you know that I'm not speaking to you from a goody-goody perspective because I'm not that. Although these broadcasts go all over the world now, there are people that know me that will tell you and can tell you truthfully and factually that I'm not that. I'll be the first one to tell you I got a lot of stains on my name. While being on this journey, just like all of us do. But, a lot of times, unfortunately, one of the things that push people away from these truths is we got too many of us that are believers, that present a false image of perfection. It's too many of us that get to where they want to go, and all of a sudden, everybody else's shortcomings are the worst thing since Satan. And so I just want to let you know before we get deeper into this, I ain't speaking to you from this perspective. Even from a life organizational standpoint, I'm picking up some pieces from a rough summer and from a long time of not necessarily doing what I'm supposed to do as we speak. So I ain't talking to you from no high horse. This admission of truth is coming from somebody that is not ashamed of his flaws. And as a matter of fact, I want you to know I got them so that you don't go into your journey or continue your journey caught up so much in the good or the bad and just learn to believe, because that's really what it's all about. So the answer to the question, is he real? Yes. And here is my evidence. I'm gonna give you two. So if you remember back right at the beginning of that piece that I read, Holy Oasis, it talked about me having the butcher's knife placed firmly against my throat, the validity of the realness of God, my one last hope. That was a real situation. Back in the early 2000s, I was going through some stuff that had tried me to what I felt like was my end. And I was ready to get up out of here. I was ready to end it. And so I got me a butcher's knife from my mama's house, the biggest one I could find out of the knife rack. Wrote me some suicide notes. Got in the car, drove to a local park. And I was ready to call it quits. So right before that moment was at hand, I laid the car seat back and I prayed one last prayer. I said, God, if you are real, you're going to have to show me right now, or I'm getting ready to end this thing. And I also told him that if you show your face, I will, at the very first opportunity I get, give my life to you to be saved. And as soon as I finished praying that prayer, now I want y'all to keep in mind that this is not something somebody told me about their journey. This is what happened to me. I experienced this with my own eyes, both spiritual and physical. As soon as I prayed that prayer, the first thing that happened is a note slipped out of the middle of the stack. The rest of them, I probably had about 7 written. The rest of the stack was not disturbed. This note slipped out of the rest of that stack, out of the middle of it, and fell onto my chest as I laid the car seat back to cut my own throat. That particular note was written to my son. And at that moment, I realized that I couldn't leave him like that, even though I wasn't being the most present father physically anyway. I knew I couldn't go out like that. And so immediately I sat the seat up. And as I sat the seat up, by the time I was sitting straight up, a plan on how to fix my situation came to mind immediately. From the person to call, I made one phone call to a specific person. From the person to call, to what to ask, and everything to do thereafter that to alleviate that pressure I was feeling and get myself back on the right track of just trying to survive. It happened immediately, and I followed those steps, and everything came to pass. And without that, I wouldn't be here today, even though I knew, even at that time, that with this writing, this ability to write, this talent to write, this gift, this passion to write, I had a job to do. I still was ready to go. But it took that one prayer, and I think that was the first time, even at the age of, I was in my early 30s, that was the first time that I actually had a life occurrence where I knew for a fact that the power of what had just happened could only be God. Regardless of whatever other doubts I had in my mind, regardless of what historical occurrence provides any type of contradiction that might make somebody think that God is not real, I knew it right then at that moment. The second time God appeared to me and showed his face to me was in 2016. I survived a ruptured brain aneurysm. Blood leaking inside my head from a ruptured brain aneurysm. And I found myself in the bathroom floor, laying in a puddle of bodily fluid from both ends. And I knew that I didn't know what was wrong at the time, but I knew that I was dying. And what came to my mind was to pray this prayer. I said, God, I can't die right now. My daughter is in the other room. At the time, my daughter was about 10 years old at the time. I said, my daughter is in the other room. And just as sure as I'm sitting here talking to y'all, everything that was wrong with me stopped, except for the pain that was in my head. Everything that was going on with me physically, it stopped. And my wife was able to get me up and clean up the mess and get me in the shower. And I went to sleep. I went to sleep with my brain bleeding. I woke up the next day. I laid around all that next day before deciding that I needed to go to the hospital, because in my mind, what I was thinking about was the next morning was work. And I didn't want to go to work and have something happen to me on the job. call that crazy logic, but that was what sent me to the hospital. So we get in the car. I'm walking. My wife drives me to the emergency room. We go in the emergency room, tell them what's going on. They run the test. The emergency room doctor comes back into the room with his eyes as big as golf balls. And he said, "Mr. Leak, we got to get you to Baptist Hospital. You have a brain bleed." By this time, my mom and one of my aunties, I think my brother, everybody's in there. They rushed me to Winston-Salem, North Carolina, to Baptist Hospital, where on duty, now I didn't know this at the time, but on duty happens to be a man by the name of Dr. Janjua, who at the time was like the second or third highest rated neurosurgeon in the whole country. I didn't figure that out, or I didn't learn that until months after I had recovered. We saw a story on the news about Dr. Janjua. He had just performed a surgery that had been done, a brain surgery that had been done for the first time here locally in Winston-Salem on a lady. And in that news report, they talked about his credentials. So it was months and months after I had recovered before I even learned that he was one of the top neurosurgeons in the country. So not only was he working this area of the country, but he had switched schedules that weekend with one of his neurosurgeon buddies who wanted to go on a golf retreat with some of his buddies. And so they switched schedules. And that was the reason that on that night that I was rushed to Baptist Hospital in Winston-Salem. That was the only reason that Dr. Janjua was on duty. Now, fast forward, make a long story short, the next morning, the surgery was performed, and he told me ahead of time, he told me and my family ahead of time that there's a good chance that I may not make it out of that surgery. They performed the surgery the next morning. Long story short, after a lot of rehab and some long days and nights, about 3 months later, I was back at work. Now, those two occasions, that one that I just described, and the one that I talked about first when I was at my wit's end and didn't want to see life no more. I'm not going to try to present any scripture to talk about how or what or why I believe God is real. All I'm going to do is present those two situations to you, let you analyze them, and if you're in doubt or if you don't believe it, you're listening and you just don't believe it, I would encourage you to rethink that and get you some quiet time and go down on your knees and challenge God, ask Him to show Himself. Because I look at the question like this. My logic tells me to look at it this way. I would rather assume that He's real and act accordingly and find out that I'm wrong at the end of my life about Him being real, than to assume that He's not real and live accordingly and find out at the end of my life that I was wrong about that the whole time. Because when you start talking about weighing the pros and the cons, if you're wrong about it, I would rather be wrong about it an assumption that God is real, because the consequences thereafter, I don't want to face living with. Whether you believe in an afterlife or not, whether you believe in a hell or not, that's what we have learned comes after the afterlife. And if you really, honestly, and I'm not trying to downplay nobody or disrespect nobody, this is strictly from a lack of understanding. If you don't believe in God, I don't understand how you will believe that there's an afterlife anyway. But having said that, from a spiritual standpoint, when this is all said and done, I'm going to gamble with having done it the way that I have understood it should be done when you honor God's existence. Now, we can go through what that understanding is. That's up to us as individuals to get. I just felt it very important that this week on the Leaky Pen podcast, where every time my soul is urged, my pen leaks words of revelation, accountability, and wisdom, that we attack that question, is he real? And put out what I feel like is my best advice for anybody that's a non-believer, anybody that's on the fence, anybody that's a believer that is currently being challenged. I say to you, keep going, because yes, he is. If you are on the fence, I say keep asking questions. Keep asking questions, keep seeking, and you will find the truth also, just like I did. Which also brings me to this. Let me say this right quick too. Get rid of the fairy tale in your mind in the sense of with God everything goes right, because that's not true. There are certain lessons that we have to learn that we can only learn through certain challenges and trials and tribulations. And in order for there to be a trial and tribulation, you have to go through some trouble. So get that part out of your head. As a matter of fact, doing so may help you believe more. So get that part out of your head. And lastly, to the all-out non-believer, all I can say is I pray one day that you challenge God enough with the sincerity that you get shown one day too that there is truth in the weeds. The weeds being all the confusion that's obviously being planted and released to push us away from the truth of God and the power of God. It's up to us to learn how to use him, how to understand him, how to live our lives with him. And something you are able to do in your life in gaining that understanding, the next person might not be able to do. So don't get caught in them arguments with people about different things, because we all have to carry our own cross, so to speak. Thank you. And I look forward to seeing you on the third edition of the Leaky Pen podcast. LJM and Shoebox Librarian. Y'all keep asking questions. The answers will show themselves soon enough. Thank you for joining me on this week's edition of the Leaky Pen Podcast, where every time my soul is urged, my pen leaks words of revelation, accountability, and wisdom.